Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
What's up, PGF Nation? We are back. NFL Week 1, college football Week 2 in the books. We had some blowout wins. We had some shocking upsets. Players making huge statements. We got rookies. We got all kinds of stuff to get to, Alex. Big episode. But once again, I'm your host, Brad Fowler. Joining me as always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, let's kick this off. And look, I want to jump back to Thursday night in the Friday game in the NFL. I know it's been a minute, but we haven't had a chance to talk about them. So let's go back real quick because I want to get your thoughts first on that Thursday night game, Dallas and Philadelphia. What were your takeaways from this game? Because I actually came away thinking that the Cowboys looked pretty good, even in a loss. Now, I know the whole thing with Jalen Carter was a big loss for that defense. It kind of looked like it took Philly a good 3 quarters to really get going in this game. Some key drops, of course, from CeeDee Lamb in that game that were huge. But to me, when I'm watching this game, they struggled to contain Jalen Hurts scrambling. There's a lack of a consistent pass rush. I think Micah Parsons definitely is missed from this team. I'm still not sure the Cowboys are great, but I was pretty impressed from them against a really good Philly team.
Yeah, they played exactly how I thought they would play. I didn't think it was going to be any type of blowout because they lost Micah Parsons. I thought that, not necessarily talking about the trade, but I thought the addition, let's just talk about the addition of Kenny Clark was evident. Philly could not run up the middle. And that's been a huge issue for the Cowboys. Kenny Clark clogged up the middle, and he was already pulling double teams. So as Abuke and Marshawn Nealon, who actually showed that they were getting to the quarterback a little bit. Obviously, you have Jalen Hurts, who's mobile, so he can get away. Other quarterbacks are not Jalen Hurts; they're not the Lamar Jackson. So I think that defense will actually look a lot better when they go against typical quarterbacks, maybe more mobile quarterbacks, not running quarterbacks. So I thought the defense looked good. Speaking of defense, on the flip side, that Eagles defensive backfield looked in shambles because Quinyon Mitchell, he got a big, huge PI. Obviously, Dory Jackson looked like James Bradbury out there. I'm pretty sure there's a meme out there with toast on him. And Cooper DeJean in the slot because CeeDee Lamb was playing in the slot. And who is their nickel corner? Cooper DeJean. If not for CeeDee Lamb dropping passes, the Cowboys more than likely would have won that game, especially on one of those passes which was wide open for a touchdown run, and one of those which was a critical third down pass that he dropped that would have kept the drive alive. Who knows what would have happened? So I thought that the offense for the Cowboys looked good, except for Miles Sanders, who forgot how to play Tecmo Ball and zigzag and got caught from Zach Bond, which is an impressive tackle by Zach Bond because he was on the other side of the field and got through all the traffic to run him down. That didn't look good for a guy like Miles Sanders, who's supposed to have a little bit of giddy up and that should have been a touchdown. And obviously we know, besides the rain delay, we know what happened. There was a fumble there that kind of turned that game all upside down anyway. So I don't know. It didn't look impressive. Dallas, I thought Dallas played exactly how I thought they would.
Yeah, that was a weird game, really weird game. You know, you got the whole spitting incident with Jalen Carter. I think that really affected Philly, though, because a big part of their pass defense is a guy like Jalen Carter being disruptive and speeding quarterbacks up. That clearly affected them. It looked like right around the third quarter, though, Philly's defense started to click, and it started playing a lot better. You're right about the run defense for Dallas. It looked better, but then they had no pass rush. So you're really trading one problem for another. I'm still not sure this is going to be a good unit, but there was a few teams that lost over the weekend in the NFL, but I actually thought they looked good in a loss. And the teams I wrote down was Dallas, the Falcons, and the Jets. I thought all those teams actually looked pretty good, even though they lost their games. And then I had 2 teams that I wrote down that really didn't impress me that much, even though they won. And that was the Bengals and the Cardinals. I didn't think either one of those teams looked very impressive, even though they got the W. We'll kind of get into some more of these games here in a minute. But before that, I want to talk about this Friday game. Of course, we had the YouTube game, this new Friday window they've kind of created in the NFL. Really good matchup, though. AFC West rivals, of course, Chiefs, Chargers, a team in Kansas City that's really had the Chargers number. I mean, since Mahomes has got there, they've really dominated the series. Even though they've had a lot of close games, it seems like the Chiefs always pull these out. But in this one, they flipped it. And Justin Herbert and the Chargers were the ones that pull out the big win and had the clutch moments. this is one of the better games I've seen from Herbert. I mean, he was lights out in this game, 73.5% of his passes, 318 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He had that huge third down run to put it on ice. And the thing that I keep coming back to, Alex, and we talked about this in the offseason going into the season, Kansas City once again struggling to make explosive plays in the passing game. And I think it's a real concern for this offense. They tried getting the ball down the field. They were clearly taking shots. And then once they realized it wasn't working, they go back to kind of the dink and dunk, quick hit offense to get the ball moving in the second half. But what are your thoughts here? Because we knew this was a problem going into this game, going into the season, I should say, as far as being able to strike downfield in this offense. Last season, Bryce Young and Will Levis had more 20-plus yard completions than Patrick Mahomes. That's how rough it's gotten for them as far as explosive plays. And it's crazy because just a few years ago, this team was a fireworks show. So,
right.
Yeah, what are your thoughts? What did you see in this one?
Well, I'll say this first. I think I guess preseason and practicing with a guy that's supposed to be there. Obviously, Xavier Worthy got hurt in this game. However, Tyquan Thornton was open 3 times deep on 25. One was for a touchdown in the first quarter, and Patrick Mahomes just missed him. Now, perhaps that's that 0.1 or 0.4 speed difference between Xavier Worthy and Tyquan Thornton, because Tyquan Thornton is a guy where I think, if I'm not mistaken, Xavier Worthy's is like a 4.29 guy. So that 0.3 or 0.4 speed and difference, perhaps that was the issue why they couldn't connect, because there were 3 times Patrick Mahomes straight missed, overthrew Tyquan Thornton. He made the right throw, but he overthrew him. So I think some of the explosive plays will be there once he gets back on track with Tyquan Thornton, and then Hollywood Brown, who's also can be a deep guy. I think they'll be fine there. The real issue was they couldn't generate any run from my perspective. There wasn't any there. Patrick Mahomes was the leading rusher. Pacheco had 25 and Kareem Hunt had 16. So I think they're missing what they used to have. At least they're not saying that those guys are world beaters, but they were missing something there. And then their secondary was, different from what we saw from a Steve Spagnuolo team. Not necessarily the pressure, because I believe that'll eventually come. But I think their defensive backfield, there's some mix-ups there. They moved on from Ladarius Sneed. Trent McDuffie's more of a slot guy to begin with, so they're trying Christian Fulton and some other guy, and Jalen Watson out there on the outside. So I think there's going to be some growing pains there. On the Charger side, I'll tell you one thing, besides my whole thing about them coming in last place, they definitely were only but running on that left side behind Joe Alt. They didn't want anything to do with the right side of their offensive line whatsoever. Amarion Hampton, I think he only had like about maybe 48 yards, whatever, but he still looked fresh. He still looked good, still was pushing. But as you said, Justin Herbert using his legs, and Quentin Johnson, who would have thought, a guy that a lot of us gave up on? I'm not saying he's a world beater, but he's continuing to what he started last year into this year. And now with Trey Harris there, who knows what this can become? And obviously Keenan Allen, the old workhorse, the old, lunch pail guy doing what he did. So they looked good, but I think that the Chiefs had a chance. He just missed a lot of big throws.
I agree with you completely. I think Quentin Johnson is a guy that a lot of us gave up on, but he's slowly kind of developing into a reliable target for Herbert. And to your point, Herbert just had a lot of time in the pocket to sit back and pick apart that secondary. I mean, there was no pass rush, and he just picked apart those DBs. And on the other side, to your point, I don't have a lot of faith in the wide receiver room for the Chiefs, though. And it's funny because going into this game, I think a lot of people were pointing at the Chargers saying they had the weak wide receiver room. I think it's the Chiefs. Really, it's a bunch of guys that just didn't work out on other teams. And I know Rashee Rice is coming back, but he's going to miss several games. The offensive line looks bad. Kelsey looks slow. Yeah, I know he had a touchdown, but man, he looks really slow. I think this is no doubt his last year. Chris Jones, where was he in this game? I think he's clearly past his prime. If this team didn't have Mahomes, the best offensive mind in the history of the NFL, a Hall of Fame defensive coordinator, I think they'd win 4 games, because look at what this team has done. And it goes back to the draft. They've only hit on 2 first-round picks since 2020. They've only hit on 2 second-round picks since 2020. One is Rashee Rice, and he's never available. And they've only hit on 1 third or fourth round pick since 2020. They've had a lot of swings and misses in the draft, and it's really starting to show up on this roster because they just don't have any depth anymore. They don't have a whole lot of young guys that you can circle and say these are building blocks for this team going forward. You're right. KC still can't run the ball. They couldn't stop the run versus LA. They struggled with the physicality. And look, Rashawn Slater's out. Like, I thought this would be a huge issue for this team, and that offensive line still dominated up front. This was eye-opening. Now, it was a close win, and I think with Mahomes and Reed, like, they're still going to be in a lot of close games. They're still going to win a lot of games. I'm not saying this team's toast, but I don't think they're this untouchable team like they were in years past. I think things have started to shift, and one thing is for certain after looking at the rest of the teams in that division, the gap between them and the rest of the division has clearly shrunk. So going to be really fascinating race to watch in the West this year. Now, I want to talk about some teams that just absolutely look terrible, because before we get into some of these other games, these jumped out to me, Alex. What in the world is going on with the Miami Dolphins? Now, we talked about this team not being very good this year. Neither one of us were very high on this team. Look, they're not going anywhere with Tua. They're not going anywhere with him. They're not going anywhere with Tyreek Hill. And I don't think they're going anywhere with this coaching staff. I said it when Tua was up for a contract. I said it on this podcast. I said I would not pay this guy. At the time, I said I wouldn't pay Dak. I wouldn't pay Trevor. I wouldn't pay Kyler. I think all these contracts have a chance of blowing up in these franchises' faces right now.
Yeah, to specifically speak about the Dolphins, I think they have a huge organizational issue. I think the GM and the owner are at odds over things that they want to do. Obviously, the coach, who I think is a really good offensive mind, this team has taken on the coach's character. To me, they're soft, and flashy. There is no toughness. Granted, they have they have a Kenneth Grant, who I think is a really tough player. But for the most part, this team is really finesse. They're built like an indoor track team, and there's nobody tough on offense. So this is a team that I thought wasn't going to make the playoffs, but I thought they would win 7 games, maybe, at least 7 games. But right now they don't look like that at all, and they can't run the ball, because at any point in time, fantasy players know this the most. Devin Achane is going to get hurt. So I don't know what the running game looks like, after that, with Jalen Wright's already out. So I believe they have Ollie Gordon and they have Ollie Gordon, so maybe you pick him up, or maybe he starts doing well. But 33-8. But you know what? I know we're talking about Miami, but we have to give a lot of kudos to our guy Quick and Daniel Jones, because Daniel Jones looked like a guy out there. I don't care who they were playing.
Yeah, he was lights out. I mean, he really was. And I don't know if that's going to continue. I don't know if the Dolphins are just that bad. I think Daniel Jones will be decent this year. Don't get me wrong. I think he's in a good situation. I think the Colts have a sneaky good roster. And I think they're a team that's a little under the radar right now. And if he can just stabilize that position, which has been a revolving door since Andrew Luck, hung up the cleats, maybe this team makes a little noise this year. It's hard to say. But yeah, the Dolphins, wow, they look bad. The only other team that really was alarming was the Giants. Man, how bad does this team look right now? What are they doing with Russ? I don't understand this move. Rip the Band-Aid off. Look, I know it's one game, but I've seen enough. I think we've all seen enough. He's shot. He's been shot. I've been saying it for 3 years. Now, look, I understand last year when Pittsburgh signed him, because they were at least a playoff level team that was hoping that a veteran quarterback could kind of elevate him. So that signing made sense. But this Giants team is terrible. We knew they weren't a true contender to even sniff a playoff. So why bring in a washed up veteran? I don't understand it at all. The offensive line is terrible, which clearly doesn't help because Russ has lost his mobility. There's really no weapons on this team outside of Malik Neighbors. Just explain this to me, Alex. What are they doing here? Because, look, we didn't love Jaxson Dart as a prospect, but he has physical tools. He did flash. He's a guy that they clearly like. I don't think there's any reason not to start him right now. Because, look, there's a really good quarterback class next April. You better find out what you have with Dart this season, because I don't think it's going to do you any good, dragging this out with Russell Wilson and starting the season, 2-6 or whatever they end up, and then putting Dart out there the second half of the year. I think you let this kid develop and see what you have.
So the first thing I'll say is I think the problem with your question about Russ, I think, is more about why Russ is even there is all about these guys, the coaching staff and GM are on their last leg. So they didn't want to go in with a rookie, and then even though if he flashes, they go, hell, 0-17, but this kid looks good. They're out the door. So I think that's what that's about. Let's just say that first. 2, I'll say the Giants defense held the Commanders onto only 21 points. They look like they were able to do their job, and they're just going to get better as they go along. 3, the one thing I'll say about the offense, Andrew Thomas was out, Evan Neal was out, and I believe they were missing the guard too. So, and Andrew Thomas alone by himself. Without Andrew Thomas, they're the 31st ranked PFF offensive line. With Andrew Thomas, they jumped to 22nd. With Neal, they jumped to 16th. So that does play a part because Washington was getting a lot of pressure. I'd like to see those guys all healthy and all together because they couldn't generate. We say Russ is washed up, but he was the leading rusher. For kicks and giggles, but
terrible.
No, right. But that's the leading rusher. But I think if you get those guys back, I'd like to see because Tyrone Tracy flashed, Cam Scatterbo. I know he had his little Mike Allstar moment there or whatever, and he's been a good blocker. He's a lunch pail guy. I'd like to see all three of those guys back on the offensive line because even if I wanted to switch to Dart, I wouldn't put him out there because I'm missing those three guys. I need those three guys back, see what this offense looks like, then I'll assess from there what Russ really is.
Yeah, before we move on real quick, there's two things because the problem with Andrew Thomas is he's never available. So as great as he is, he's always missing time. So, yeah, it'd be great if he was out there, but at this point, I don't know if he's ever going to be a consistent starter for them. And the defense has some building blocks. They've got some guys that, especially that front seven, that really look good. The problem is they're going to be on the field too much.
Yeah.
And they're going to wear out this defense because this offense cannot move the ball. And I think really the only card left to play for Brian Daboll is, as far as being able to prove that he's capable of leading this Giants in the right direction, is showing that he can develop Dart into a franchise quarterback. And I don't think wins and losses are going to matter that much if Dart comes in and looks like a good young quarterback. I think that's the only thing that's going to save him right now. Let's shift gears here because one of the best games over the weekend, Steelers-Jets, this game was crazy, back and forth, 7 lead changes. The Jets were one of the teams that I thought actually looked pretty good in a loss. The Steelers didn't think looked very good in a win. I wasn't impressed by this win at all. And you can look at the stats for Rodgers and the 4 touchdowns and this and that. I didn't think he was great. I really didn't. Look, there were some moments there where I thought, okay, the offense clearly looks better, but here's the problem with Pittsburgh. The defense looks like they've taken a step back. They look old and slow. They faded down the stretch last year, and I think it could be carrying over into this year. That Jets team moved the ball all over them, and I don't think that's a great offense by any means.
Yeah, so I'll the first. It's similar to the things I'll say the same thing about the Steelers. They were missing Derek Harmer was out, and obviously Cam Hayward just signed his contract, so I think he only played like 25 snaps. So I think that has something to do why the Jets ran for almost 200 yards, including, obviously inclusive of Justin Fields, but really, Breece Hall looking at the game, I thought Breece Hall had like 150 yards rushing. I didn't realize he only had 107, but they could not stop the run at all. And obviously Justin Fields being elusive, I always give a little bit of, leeway with pass rushes and chasing down the Lamars, the Justin Fields, the Josh Allens, because those guys are mobile. They look slow, I think, because of who they were playing. But I think that was the problem on the Pittsburgh defensive side. And I think there's also a problem because this was an offensive game. So for two teams who, over the past few years, the Jets obviously have been hitting on every single defensive pick, and then the Steelers historically have been a defensive team. Both defenses were nowhere to be found at all. Neither defense was anywhere to be found. I don't think anybody made a play whatsoever for the most part. So the defenses on this team made it both exciting because if you told me that this was going to be one of the highest scoring games of the weekend, I wouldn't have believed you given what the Jets defense is, having a defensive coordinator as a coach, and then Mike Tomlin and historically what they've done. I would have thought this would have been more of a 20-17 game. So this was all about the offense, and the Jets really looked like the team that should have won that game. But exciting game. Aaron Rodgers, if he's comfortable, we know how he can get. If he's comfortable, we'll just have to wait and see. I don't know. But the Jets did look good offensively, especially that running game.
But see, that's my biggest concern about this, though, is that we had a weekend full of low-scoring games, which is kind of expected in week one because the defenses are usually ahead of the offense early on in the season. We saw it in college football. We saw it in the NFL. And then we get a shootout in a game that really doesn't have great offenses but has really good defenses on paper. It's a concern for me. I didn't know what to make of this game. And like I said, it was sloppy. I thought the Steelers got some serious breaks in this game, especially late, to kind of pull this one out. I thought the Jets were the better team in this game. I'm not sure what to make of Pittsburgh. I don't have a whole lot of hope for this team. I think they'll be okay, but I think they're in for a serious reset next year because I don't think this is going to go as well as they hope for. Now, I want to quickly touch on a team that I mentioned did not look good, even though they won. I was not impressed with the Cincinnati Bengals at all. if there wasn't a missed kick late in this game, they probably lose this game. The offense really struggled to move the ball. 7 total yards in the second half against the Browns.
The only takeaway I have from the Bengals is they had a balanced offense, meaning they ran 23 times, given the Joe Burrow 2 runs, and they threw 23 times. That's something that hasn't been what we've seen. That's the only good takeaway that I have. The defense, I'll leave alone because, like we said, usually defenses are ahead of the offense here. And then the Flacco interception, one interception was bad. I think the other one popped up off of somebody and they got the pick. But neither team, no running. The Bengals ran for 46 yards. The Browns ran for 49 yards. So rushing non-existent on both sides. To their credit, they gave Chase Brown 21 carries throughout the game, and he only had 43 yards, but that shows me there's a shift in philosophy and how this is going to look going forward. So I'll wait and see on that. And before we move on, has the clock started on Joe Flacco? Just asking. I'm just asking.
I mean, it looks like it's his job for now. I mean, right? Like it looks like it's his job for now, but I don't know what they're doing in that quarterback room. I really don't. I don't think the owner, the coaches, I don't think any of them really know what they're doing. And you know what? Before we move on, it's actually kind of a shame that it's such a mess in Cleveland because I think they've got a good head coach. So, Stefanski being an offensive guy, and then you've got Schwartz, who's, I think, a very good defensive coordinator. You've got one heck of a coaching staff. For being a bad football team, it's surprising how good their coaching is. So if they could just get the right pieces in place, this team could probably be good, but it's just been off the rails here for a minute. Let's shift down to the NFC South because there was a game down there that was great. This was one of my favorite games of the weekend, Alex. Back and forth late. This had drama. This came down to the wire. Michael Penix making plays, the second-year quarterback who came on late last year. Look, he was my pick for Breakout Player of the Year. I know that's not a real award. I just made that award up. It's a PGF award, but he's going to be the Breakout Player of the Year for me. If you actually, by the way, real quick, if you guys want to hear the real NFL awards as far as MVP, DPOY, all that stuff, playoff teams, Super Bowl picks, our division winners, if you want to see all of our predictions for those, make sure you subscribe to the free newsletter. Because we posted it in the newsletter recently. The website is in the episode description. You can check out mine and Alex's picks for all of those things. Definitely some good stuff there. You'll have to see who we've got taking home hardware and going all the way. But Alex, your thoughts here, because I really like what I saw from Penix. I like what I saw from this offense. But man, Baker Mayfield in this Bucs offense, Emeka Egbuka coming through late. He looks great. He was a rookie that we both liked out of Ohio State. This Bucs team just once again is not going to go away. And late in that game, Baker throws that dime down the seam and just puts a dagger in the Atlanta Falcons fans' hearts because they thought they had this game won. But what a great game. And look, like I said, Falcons are a team that in a loss I thought looked great. But the Bucs are still a tough out, man.
Yeah. So, okay, couple of things. Because I watched this game. Shout out to NFL Plus. You should sponsor us. But I watched this game twice. Once so I could just watch the Michael Penix against Tampa Bay's defense, and then again to watch Baker versus Atlanta's defense. First thing, I'm going to talk about Atlanta first. Atlanta's defense, and they look like they're going to be a problem. They have a no-fly zone back there with A.J. Terrell and Jesse Bates, Jeff Okudah, and a couple guys back there. They look like, and Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. Watch out for that guy as a possible sneaky defensive rookie of the year. So the defense looks like they're going to be able to give some problems. Jalen Walker and James Pierce up front. So I'll start there. Secondly, everybody knows you can go back. I always said Michael Penix to me was my number 2 quarterback in that great draft with Caleb, Jaden, and Drake May. I thought Michael Penix looked very, really good. I think he was about 80% completion percentage. He was throwing dots, and then the toughness of the things that everybody's worried about with his legs. He ran up the middle and got a rushing touchdown as well. He got Kyle Pitts involved, and Kyle Pitts looked like there's a play where Kyle Pitts, I think it was about maybe an 8-yard out, and then he just trucked people and stiff-armed people to make it turn into a 15-yard gain. If that's the Kyle Pitts we're going to get, Atlanta could contend for that division. On the other side, Baker Mayfield, this is what I love to talk about. Baker Mayfield was 17 for 32. I believe that's 53%, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Toughness. This is not a trait. This is not about your arm. This is about your mental fortitude, because Atlanta was giving him hell. but he maintained his composure. He threw that post route dart to another rookie, Emeka Egbuka, who could possibly contend for Offensive Rookie of the Year because he had 2 touchdowns. Let's remember that Mike Evans is on this team and Chris Godwin's come back, and so is Jalen McMillan, and they have Higdon, and they have Bucky Irvin. So they are loaded on offense, and he used every single weapon to win that game and without making a mistake. And 53%, but he made the plays that mattered. They're going to be a team to watch again when these two teams meet up, because I think there's going to be some fireworks. The last thing I'll say about this, Zach Robinson in the Atlanta Falcons. Zach Robinson's the offensive coordinator. Bijan Robinson had 12 carries. 12. No. It's still a rookie quarterback. No. You cannot have a rookie quarterback out there with probably one of the top 3 weapon in this league at running back and not have him touch the ball 20 to 25 times again in this rookie's first game. You could have helped out your defense a lot more by utilizing him more on the ground instead of trying to throw the ball 42 times and only running him 12.
Can Tampa Bay win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield?
Yes, they can. Yes. The defense is going to have to be ready, though, because he's going to throw a pick. Yeah.
But here's the thing. We know the defense is always going to be good as long as Todd Bowles is there. He always knows how to dial it up and keep quarterbacks guessing. I trust that side of the ball. And like you said, the offense has enough weapons around him. He's playing with a ton of confidence. I think he's hitting the prime of his career right now. I'm just wondering, how good is this team? I mean, can they? I know they're a bit of a dark horse Super Bowl team. Well, maybe a real dark horse, because I don't think anyone's talking about them in that light. Right. Could this be a team that shocks people in the NFC and makes a real run at it? Because I'm starting to think they might. No, I shouldn't say that they might. I'm starting to think they could. Let's put it that way. I'm starting to think they could.
Let me ask you a question. Last season against Washington, if Tampa Bay doesn't shoot themselves in the foot, Washington's at home, and then we get to see if the Bucs can make that run. Because Washington didn't beat them. They beat themselves.
That's a really good point. And until they ran into that buzzsaw that was the Eagles, they were giving everybody problems. So maybe that's the Bucs making that run. That's a good point. Let's talk about NFC West, Niners, Seahawks, rivalry up in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, hostile environment. This was another low-scoring defensive battle. But look, I was impressed with Brock Purdy. And I can't help but be impressed. I know he had some bad throws. I know he had a couple picks in this game. So he wasn't perfect. But all in all, this guy was pressured on 43.6% of his dropbacks. He's got injuries all over the place to key players. Kittle goes out. He's got offensive line issues. They're clearly getting after him. And Brock Purdy really just helped lift the 49ers in some big moments in this game. 6 for 6 passing on the final drive with a game-winning touchdown pass on the road, 34 left on the clock, versus what I think is looking like a really good Seahawks defense. Mike McDonald has that thing clicking over there. I was impressed. What were your thoughts about Purdy, his performance, and just a big win for this team when it didn't look like they were going to pull this out?
Well, we're going to disagree here. Everybody who says we don't disagree. No, I didn't think Purdy looked good. He got bailed out. The 6 for 6 should have been 5 for 6 because that was an interception. Tariq Woolen just dropped it. Now, granted, hadn't caught it. However, it was a terrible pass. He was not going to win the game. He would have had 2 TDs and three turnovers. Because that
you're talking about the touchdown pass?
Yeah, the touchdown pass. Tariq Woolen caught it. He dropped it, and the receiver caught it. That wasn't a throw where the receiver jumped up and caught it. He dropped the ball. Tariq Woolen literally he overthrew him. Tariq Woolen was standing back. He caught it and then dropped it. That's why he dropped down to his knee, because the game was over if he catches it or knocks it down. But instead, he caught it, and then the receiver's standing under him looking at it, and he dropped it. And he dropped it right into the receiver's hands because the receiver never touched the ball. The ball was touched by Tariq Woolen, and he dropped the interception. That was a terrible pass. They should have lost that game. The one thing I will say that's good about the 49ers is that Christian McCaffrey withstood 22 carries and had 69 yards, and then I believe nine catches for 73 yards. I guess you could call him a second-year rookie in Ricky Pearsall. Unfortunately, he got shot last year. He had 100 yards receiving from Florida, by the way. And so he looked good. But, Brock Purdy didn't look good to me. No, I'm not giving that to Brock Purdy. He threw an interception to end the game, and the guy dropped it. Yeah, but he just happened to drop it into the other guy's hands.
I was like, I'm definitely going to disagree with you on that because that was a great anticipatory throw. Gave his guy a chance, knew he had the bigger guy on the smaller defender. I thought he was absolutely clutch down the stretch. But regardless, they get the win. Sam Darnold looked like what I expected from him. Now, I know it's one game, but look, he looks like he's going to come crashing back down to earth this year. No more Kevin O'Connell calling the plays. No more Justin Jefferson and elite playmakers around him. He just looks like a guy. He does not look like a guy you can build around. He doesn't look like a guy that's going to be playing in Seattle for the next 5 to 7 years. I just don't see it. I think that's going to be a major problem for them. Now, lucky for them, because Mike McDonald's there, because the defense flies around and makes plays, they'll probably be competitive this year, but I think the offense has some real issues. But I don't want to take away the credit that I think Robert Saleh deserves because I do think this defense already looks much better than it did last year. Now, it's one game, and I know, this week, it's always overreactions. Everyone always has big overreactions to my team's 1-0, this team's 0-1, this team's terrible, this team's great, and we all overreact to these games, of course. So I don't want to do that, but they did look good. It did look like an improvement. I do think it was the best offseason coordinator hire in the NFL, and I think it will pay dividends for this team down the stretch. But, man, they've got to find a way to get healthy, because this injury bug looks like it's already back again in San Francisco, and that's going to be a major problem for them if they have another season like that where they're just losing key guys. And part of it is, a lot of these guys are getting older. A lot of their key players are older, guys like Trent Williams, guys like Kittle, and so you're more prone to have some injuries. But, yeah, that could be a problem if they don't get healthy. I've already heard some reports now that Brock Purdy got banged up a little bit in that game too.
Yeah.
So it's already a little shaky, even though it was a really good week 1 win for them. Now, let's talk about, before we get to the primetime games, Packers-Lions. I think this was by far the most impressive win of the weekend because this was not a competitive ball game. This was an absolute beatdown. For not 1 second did it look like the Lions had any chance in this game to come back. I think this Packers defense has a chance to be the best in the NFL this year. Jeff Hafley has been a great hire since he came over last year. And if you look at, they had years under Joe Barry of very traditional schemes, very passive play calling on the defensive side of the ball. Hafley came in and has really brought new life to that defense. He is one of the most creative, chaotic defensive play designers in the NFL. A lot of hybrid looks, a lot of simulated blitzes, very aggressive, likes to try to get guys attacking downhill. And this team, I think, was missing that one key piece, and it was a game-changing pass rusher. And I think that move to add Micah Parsons was absolutely huge. And this is a team that traditionally doesn't take big swings. They don't go after big free agents typically. They don't make big trades like this. It's very out of the norm for the Green Bay Packers historically, but they knew they had a legit chance to bring on a guy that could be the missing piece of this defense, and I think he is. Micah Parsons had a higher pass rush win rate than Myles Garrett last season, and it wasn't close. And if you look at before, I can already hear you guys right now. I can already see it in the comments. Somebody saying, well, Myles Garrett gets double teamed. Parsons gets double teamed at a higher percentage than Myles Garrett. So I don't want to hear that argument either. This guy has been dominant rushing the passer, and I think they're going to unlock him. And look, he was only on the field for, I think, about 30 snaps.
Yep.
Something like that. Obviously, they're kind of bringing him on slowly, and he was already making an impact with a limited sample size. Alex, I think this Packers team looks like one of the most complete teams in football.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, okay, from the Lions side, listen, if you've been listening to me talk about myself and Brad talking about leading up to the first week of the season, I told you all, you can't lose that many coordinators, that many assistant coaches, your borderline Hall of Fame center and Frank Ragnow, your starting guard and your left and your right tackle beyond Taylor Decker, and think that you're going to go into this game and be competitive, or go into the season and be competitive until you see what your coordinators on, everybody's back healthy. So that's number one. Number two, to your point about Micah Parsons, anybody can say what they want to say. He was one hand, go look at the film, he was one hand lifting Penei Sewell up off the ground and pushing him back into Jared Goff. So it's not, forget the double team. All of you look at Penei Sewell. He's probably the closest thing that we've had to an Orlando Pace or Walter Jones or Joe Thomas since those guys have come in, and he's just been straight up dominant. And Micah Parsons was dominating him. Pause. So that's the first thing on the Lions side. On the Green Bay side, not a lot was needed from Jordan Love. We know he has a propensity to throw a ball to the other team every now and then, but if the defense is going to be able to do their job, he's not going to be thinking about making overtly big plays to try and keep themselves in the game, making mistakes. I'm waiting for Matthew Golden. I think he's going to explode probably around week 3, but as an overall team, they look like the most talented team in the NFC. And yes, I'm saying that over the Eagles with all the talent that they have. But those players are young. You tell me you add Micah Parsons, you got Edgerrin Cooper, you got Quay Walker, you got Rashawn Gary, you have Wyatt, you have Xavier. I can't think of his name that they got
McKinney.
From the Giants. Thank you, Xavier McKinney back there.
Edgerrin Cooper from last year.
Right, Edgerrin Cooper from last year. And then Lucas Van Ness, where they're now going to be rotating a lot of these plays. Sound familiar, Eagle fans? Sound familiar, anybody who's been having to deal with that? They have a lot of depth, and they have a lot of youth, and they have a great offensive coach and a defensive coach who looks like he knows how to use all of these pieces. Me and Brad have been saying for 2 years now that the Packers are ready. This is the first year that we could really put our money down and say the Packers are ready.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and I think you're right. To your point about Detroit, I still think this is going to be a good football team, but we said this is a team that's probably going to take a step back this year, and it really showed up in week 1 because you just can't replace 2 high-level coordinators like that with guys in the room. I think they're in for a rude awakening because the play calling didn't look as creative. It didn't look as cohesive. Defensively, they didn't look as aggressive. And you're right about the offensive line because just a couple years ago, we were talking about Detroit as possibly the best offensive line in football. But they've lost some key pieces up front, and it does not look the same. It certainly didn't look the same in week 1. So with all those losses for Detroit, like we said, this is a team that probably takes a step back. Packers look like they take a step forward. What's the panic meter for Detroit, Alex? Like, once again, don't want to overreact to week 1, but what is the panic meter for Detroit? Because it's not just a loss, it's a dominant loss against a rival in your division.
I think their panic meter is at 4 because I think everybody, after the first initial shock of losing the game, you wake up Monday morning and you're sitting there, now it's Tuesday, you're sitting there and saying, okay, you know what? Like I said, all these guys were out, a lot of the offensive line was out. We got to give these guys a chance. I think when we get to week 4, going into week 5, that panic meter could get to a 6, 7, depending on how they look after the first 4 weeks.
Let's get to that Sunday night football game. Man, this was an instant classic. Ravens, Bills, wow. I mean, I don't think it was just Bills fans who left the stadium early. I think a lot of people flipped the TV off because this looked like it was getting out of hand. What a comeback. This was unbelievable, Alex. Bills rallied 16 points in the final 4 minutes they score against this Ravens team. Look, there's very few in NFL history, very few guys capable of lifting a team like Josh Allen did versus this Ravens team. Look, Josh Allen gets the week 1 game ball for me. It's a no-brainer. Look, we forgot to do game ball and helmet stickers last week, so I apologize, PGF Nation. Try to keep that going from here on out because we love doing that. But for me, it was Josh Allen. I don't think it's close. I mean, this guy was superhuman at quarterback on Sunday Night Football. And when you watch this team, the Ravens roster is clearly superior in just about every area. I really can't find any for the Bills that I look at and say they're better in this group than the Ravens. I think the Ravens are literally better across the board. And you look at a guy like Josh Allen, he doesn't have a Derrick Henry. He doesn't have Saquon Barkley. He doesn't have a Travis Kelce or a Tyreek Hill in their primes. He doesn't have a Jamar Chase or a T. Higgins. He has good teammates. He doesn't have anything like that. What this guy has done is unbelievable. He doesn't have an offensive wizard for a coach. He doesn't have a Ben Johnson. He doesn't have an Andy Reid. He's got a coach that, quite frankly, I'm not sure is even that good of a coach. And this guy just puts the cape on and keeps the Bills. He is the one thing that keeps this Bills team a contender. Now, I'm not saying they don't have any good players. They've got some good players. But I think just as far as if you look at all the true Super Bowl contenders, they probably have the worst roster out of everybody. But they've got a chance because of this guy. It's unbelievable the level he's playing at. And look, I don't want to take anything away from that Ravens team because I think the Ravens are legit. I think they have as good a roster as anybody. I think Lamar Jackson is superhuman in his own right, and he was incredible in this game. But what a game. What a game, Alex. Your thoughts. A lot of different directions you can go here.
Yeah, so I'll simply stick with the Ravens. I'll start with the Bills first. No running game to be found. Let's just talk about that. James Cook was nowhere to be found. They tried to run, but it looks like that's kind of been a lot for a lot of teams except for Baltimore. But there was no running game. Obviously, Josh can use his legs, but the throws, that key throw down the seam to Keon Coleman, which, by the way, that was on Jair Alexander, if I'm not mistaken. So he had a breakout game with 112. And I believe he also caught a 2-point conversion as well as a touchdown. But Josh Allen they outscored them 22-6 in the fourth, which leads me to Baltimore's side. Obviously, Derrick Henry was looking exactly how he looked last year, the last time they played them in the regular season, just running all over them. And by the end of the season, we're going to be talking about a guy, if you don't think so now, he's probably going to be a top 5 back there, at least I've ever seen. I'm 49 years old, but he's going to be one of the top 5 backs that I've ever seen play in this league.
I think he already is.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, it's an argument, but, people want like the numbers, so you know how that goes. Lamar, I thought, was really good, making a lot of throws. He missed some throws. I thought he should have used Mark Andrews more, but that's neither here nor there because I don't think that was the problem. You put up 40 points, you expect your team to win. Baltimore is a team that has always prided themselves since their inception on defense. For the last 2 years have started the same exact way, is that there is heavy confusion in the defensive backfield. Now, what shouldn't be when you have Malachi Starks, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphreys, and Jair Alexander. And by the way, they have a first-round pick from 2 years ago, Nate Wiggins, and they have a guy that we liked coming out in the draft in TJ Tampa. So there's a lot of depth in that defensive backfield. There should not be that much confusion.
The only thing I'll push back on that real quick, though, is you've got Jair Alexander, who's playing his first game in Baltimore.
Right.
And you've got a rookie starting.
Yeah, that's fine.
And Malachi Starks. So don't get me wrong. It is a good unit, and you do have a great mix of veterans around those guys. But there is some new pieces here for game one.
Right.
To be fair.
Right. However, if I bring a guy like Jair Alexander over, he's had enough practices that he should be able to fit in. Malachi Starks, if you want to give him the learning curve, I can completely understand that. But Marlon Humphreys, Kyle Hamilton, this is the same confusion last year when they had veterans back there. They had the same exact issue. So you bring in quote-unquote better plays. You replace Brandon Stevens with Jair Alexander. You replace Marcus Williams with Malachi Starks. Players. This is a defensive coaching issue. And Zach Ord, listen, the Ravens since our inception, if you go from Marvin Lewis to Rex to McDonald to Chuck Pagano, they've never missed when they've hired from within to promote these guys. They've never missed on defensive coordinators. Right now, there's an issue going on with the defensive coordinator. I don't know if it's Zach Orr's youth and coaching knowledge versus those other guys who had a lot. I just think that, and last year they had the same issue, even when us as the Raiders beat them. We shouldn't have in their house, but they brought in DPs around week 6 or 7 last year and kind of strained it out, and that's how they were able to get on their mode heading down there. The other part is they don't have a pass rush. They are missing a pass rusher. I know they brought in Mike Green, but to your point, Brad, he's young. He has to learn. Metabuke is okay, but they need more of a pass rush. I said, regardless of what anybody thinks, me and Brad, we were texting our text group. I said, they need to call Jadeveon Clowney now because he's motivated when they're winning, when he's on a winning team. You need to get somebody in here that knows how to get after the quarterback because they cannot get after the quarterback, especially if that defensive backfield can't hold up. They're going to need to do something drastic with pass rushing until they can get all those guys in defensive backfield because what they have now, they shouldn't be giving up 41 points, especially 22 in the fourth quarter. And what was that defensive call where they ran zero coverage and Keon Coleman, who's not a speedster, beat Jair Alexander down the seam for that big catch on the winning drive? That didn't make any sense at all.
I think Baltimore will be fine. I think this Bills team is going to hang points on a lot of people. So I think at the end of the year, this could be one of the few games all year where they give up a score like this. I think they're going to be okay. But to your point, generating more of a pass rush might be something that they need to manufacture more than bringing in someone. It might be one of those things where, look, we do have a really good secondary, so we can afford to blitz more. We can afford to bring extra guys in the box and generate a pass rush versus having our guys beat guys one-on-one, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how they tinker with that. I want to, before we move on, because we got some college football to get to as well, and the Monday Night Football game as well. I want your thoughts on the 4th and 3 call, John Harbaugh punting on 4th and 3 late in that game, because he's getting a lot of heat from people, a lot of people in the media, and I can see both sides of it. And I'm curious your thoughts on. Well, let me ask you this, because I think hindsight's 20/20, and so sometimes I think it's unfair when a coach makes a decision like that and the other team benefits from that decision, where Josh Allen gets the ball, marches down the field, and they win the game. It looks bad in hindsight, but let's face it, that's kind of an unfair way to look at things sometimes. In the moment, when it was 4th and 3, and you know they were thinking about going for it, and you could hear the announcers talking about, are they going to go for it here? Are they going to punt? What's the decision going to be here? Big decision for John Harbaugh. And he punts it. What was your feeling in the moment before that? Did you like that strategy? Because the Bills had no timeouts. Mm-hmm. So I understood it from the standpoint of, look, if we go for it on 4th and 3 and we don't get it, we're basically losing this game. Because at that point, you're giving up so much field advantage. Essentially, the game's over at that point. Well, but if you punt, you're relying on your defense, kind of the old school way of thinking. Like, even though the defense had struggled, especially late in that game, that had struggled against Allen in this offense, but his thinking clearly was, let's pin him deep with no timeouts and hope our defense can get a stop. So what was your thoughts in the moment?
Well, I'll say this really quick. Back when the Patriots were going to the Super Bowl, their second Super Bowl against the Giants, they had the 30th ranked defense. And you know what Bill Belichick did on those plays? He went for it. Now, the same thing here. You should have gone for it. And Lamar bailed him out in media day. I think that Monday he bailed him out when he said, I had a leg cramp or whatever. However, they haven't. What was the tempo of the game? It was a tennis match. It was back and forth. Fences were not stopping anybody, and they damn sure were not stopping that truck called Derrick Henry. You line up and you run that behind Falele, because that's the only thing he can do well, respectfully, is run block. You run behind Falele and you say, get me 3 yards, and Derrick Henry would have gone out and got you 3 yards. What I really think happened, I believe the analytics person that the front office hired that's been messing with John Harbaugh and how he coaches told him to punt the ball. That's my belief, and nobody can tell me different, because since they've hired that analytics guy, they've gone for it with J.K. Dobbins on the bench and Tyler Huntley going for a 2-yard quarterback sneak that didn't make sense. That was an analytics call and not a coaching call. I believe that was an analytics call and not the coach.
That was my first thought, Alex, was this has got to be an analytics play. But then I found out today that the analytics said to go for it. And he went,
their analytics say to go for it. That's the question.
Yeah. So the analytics side of it was, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I just heard it today. It was on the NFL channel. It was talking about the analytics would have been a 77% chance of winning if they go for it, and slightly less if they punted. Now, it wasn't a huge margin. It was pretty close, but
close enough to go for it.
Thought for sure they were going to go for it there. And even though I love your idea of Derrick Henry, for me, I'm putting the ball in Lamar's hands with some sort of RPO type of play where you can give him the option to run or pass, depending on how the defense, what look they give him. If they try to crash down on Lamar running, it gives him an out, being able to throw there. You have a quick hitting slant, somebody over the middle. That's what I would have done, and you put it in your best player's hands. Nothing against Derrick Henry, but that's, we know how dynamic
it's obvious.
Lamar is.
It's more obvious. And to be clear, Joey Bosa was biting inside all game long, and Lamar was running right around.
He was really having a hard time with that zone read for sure. But man, what a game. What a game. All right. Still more to get to, guys. So I want to get your thoughts here. Monday Night Football, Vikings-Bears. This was a tale of two halves. This was a crazy game because it opens up. Bears look sharp. That scripted drive. Caleb looks great. 10 for 10. Touchdown. He's running around making plays. He's making great throws. Every Bears fan's got to be thinking after that first drive, wow, here we go. Ben Johnson's here. The offense is finally going to look good, and they get the early lead. The first half, they really got control of the game. J.J. McCarthy looks absolutely lost. He's making terrible plays. You're seeing all these memes and people on Twitter's already calling for this guy being a bust. I mean, it was crazy how reactionary we've become as a society. But obviously things flip in the second half. I felt like the Vikings made the adjustments that the Bears didn't make. They started getting pressure on Williams. The Bears clearly couldn't get a running game going while the Vikings committed to running the ball and did get a running game going. I thought that was really the difference in this game. And just the fact that J.J. McCarthy was able to shake off that bad first half and started really clicking and making some nice plays in the second half and started really looking like a really confident quarterback in the pocket and made some big time throws. What are your thoughts here? Because look, the Bears, to me, one thing that stood out, Alex, was the Bears invested a lot in that offensive line, and it didn't look very good. And Brian Flores put a lot of pressure on them and was getting a ton of pressure on Caleb Williams. He was actually pressured 30 times in this game. Now, to his credit, he was only sacked once, which I thought was pretty impressive considering how much trouble that O-line was having with that front. I think the O-line is going to take a little time to gel. I think it's going to take them a little time to figure this out. I think they'll be better as the season goes along. But, man, this has got to be a punch in the gut for Bears fans because it felt like they had this one, and it really slipped away in the second half.
Yeah, so, I mean, really the conversation about this game is really just the quarterbacks. Like you said, Taylor two halves, really. Well, Taylor two drives. One, even on the 10 for 10, Caleb missed a huge throw because Rome Odunze should have had 2 touchdowns. He missed them wide open down the seam. But neither here nor there, they still won. But after that, like you said, Ben Johnson, no adjustments. I could not understand for the life of me why J.J. McCarthy was sitting in there as if he's a quarterback that just stands back there and throws darts. That's not his game. I felt they should have involved the run more because that's what he's accustomed to, the traditional quarterback coming from Michigan. They decided to switch to that in the second half. Jordan Mason looked like specifically in that game, the better running back over Aaron Jones, and then they decided to give him more carries, which you would do. They went with the hot hand in Jordan Mason, and then JJ settled down and started making passes, play action, nice throws to, well, let's just say Triple J. There were some nice plays there. He finally hit. He was able to get Aaron Jones because he underthrew a terrible ball to him on the first wheel right where he was or had a step. But in the second half, started to calm down. Plays started to be made, and as you said, Brian Flores dialing up the defense, and they actually got him twice because Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen were going crazy up the middle, where they did the most work on the offensive line with Dahlman, Tui, and Jonah Jackson. They couldn't do anything with either Jonathan Allen or Hargraves. I didn't even hear Dallas Turner's name called in the game. That pressure and that defense, that game was won defensively in the trenches, specifically in the middle of that line. So, but I thought that J.J. McCarthy at the end looked good, and I just thought Caleb just fizzled out after the first quarter, respectfully. He had that nice throw to Zacchaeus running to the side, but that was about it. But again, no running game from the Bears. They've got to figure something out there to help the kid out.
Yeah, you can't have Caleb Williams being your leading rusher. And like you said, you've got to get that figured out. The O-line has got to gel and show something here in these next couple of weeks. But I think it will. I don't think Bears fans need to panic. And I think it was just a tough game for them with a new coaching staff, new system for this young quarterback. All right, week 2, college football. Alex, week 2. Didn't have as many juicy matchups, but there was definitely some interesting storylines. Where do you want to start here, Alex? Because I think the biggest storyline, unfortunately, might have been your Florida Gators. And I hate to bring up a sore subject here, but wow. Look, I'll let you take the floor here. What did we see here? Because South Florida comes in, upsets number 15 Florida in the swamp, no less. Now, look, South Florida just got back-to-back wins over ranked teams. So they look like a pretty good group of 6 team here, but that's not going to satisfy Florida fans. And I don't think it's going to satisfy the people that are calling for Billy Napier's job here. I don't think this is a loss that he can ever live down. I think he is in serious trouble. We already knew that his seat was pretty hot. Now, he put the fire extinguisher to the seat at the end of last year when they kind of went on that run and started looking like, okay, you know what? He's got this program going in the right direction. You've got this young quarterback who's starting to flash. This is a team that kind of came in with some momentum this year, and South Florida just put it out like a cigarette butt. So, Alex, your thoughts on Florida? Where do they go from here? And how much trouble is Billy Napier? How much trouble is this program in, quite frankly?
Well, the program's not in trouble thanks to Gatorade, so I'll say that first. What's in trouble is Billy Napier's job. His seat has already burned up. He stands now at work. So, and I was saying this last year. I will start the bandwagon. I'll back the Brinks truck up now for Lane Kiffin or Deion Sanders. I don't have much to say about the game because that's the only thoughts about the game. Who's the next coach, Deion or Lane Kiffin? And I vote for Lane Kiffin. I will take Deion as a consolation prize, but definitely I will take Lane Kiffin.
Look, we had a similar conversation about Ryan Day at Ohio State just recently, where they lost once again to Michigan for, I think, the fourth year in a row. And we said on this podcast, anything short of a national championship run, and he's gone.
Right.
Because these fans aren't going to have it. You know, these blue blood programs like Florida and some of these schools, they don't put up with losing very well, and they certainly don't put up with mediocrity.
Yep.
And I think outside of an SEC title run, Alex, I mean, they're going to have to get hot here and rip off some serious wins to save his job. Is there any? Can he save his job?
No.
What would he have to do to save his job? Because I think outside of maybe an SEC title and a playoff berth, I mean, would that be enough?
No. Okay, so you know who we play next? Okay, in case you don't know who we play next, we play LSU at LSU. You know who we play after that? Miami at Miami. You know who we play after that? Texas at home. You know who we play after that? Texas A&M at Texas A&M. So yeah, that's the next 4-game gauntlet. So this game should have been a win, because my expectation was if we win this game, we're either going to beat LSU or Miami. We're not going to lose back-to-back games. We're going to beat one of those teams we were going to be able to beat. Now, because I think he's lost the team and the noise is so loud in Gainesville, we're going to go on a 4-game losing streak, and he probably gets fired after the Texas A&M game. They'll let him go through the gauntlet and lose every game and see if he can win one of those games. And if he doesn't, then he will be gone. Get the Brinks trucks ready for, like I said, Lane Kiffin or Deion Sanders. There is no way he can salvage this team, because that gauntlet that I just gave you, he's going to lose 3 out of those 4 games now, as opposed to where I thought he might lose 2, maybe lose 2, win 2 and lose 2. And then perhaps we would end up with 3 losses with that. I think when we play Georgia at the end of the season, we would end up with another loss and be 9-3 and sitting on the bubble for the playoffs. But now, no, I think everything is lost. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we're not even ranked anymore.
So you're telling me there's a chance? You know, so they play LSU. Yeah. And look, LSU, I'm not sure that win over Clemson in week 1, I'm not sure it looks as impressive as it did in week 1, because LSU beats Louisiana Tech, and look, they controlled the game. Don't get me wrong. They controlled that game, but they didn't blow the doors off of Louisiana Tech. And if you're really the number 3 team in the country, you should dominate a team like that. This is a group of 5 team. This isn't a power conference team with, 3 and 4-star guys even. We're talking about a team that probably doesn't even have a 4-star guy on their whole roster. You're LSU. You should be dominating this team. I think that is a little bit alarming. Nussmeier, who, look, I like this kid, but not very impressive in this game either. 26 for 41, only 237 yards, a lot of underneath stuff, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Now, Clemson, on the other hand, who I just mentioned, they almost lose to Troy. That was shocking. So now it's got me thinking, Alex, how good is Clemson?
I think LSU, because of their defense, is going to be able to do some things. I think on the Clemson side, Cade Klubnik, shout out to Mario, he might not be who they told us he was, because I didn't think anything of him really. I just heard he was going to be a guy that was going to be a possible top pick. I didn't think anything. The same way I feel about him, the same way I felt about Carson Beck. I didn't see it, but if you're telling me he's a guy, I'll keep watching. But I think Clemson is going to get clipped. I think they're going to get clipped by Georgia Tech.
Is Cade Klubnik this year's Carson Beck?
He's looking like it, and that's how I've always felt about him. I never thought there was anything dynamic about him. I didn't get it, but they said he is a guy. So,
but Carson Beck. To be fair, Carson Beck flashed too. And I think that's what this was, because Cade Klubnik flashed last year. And there was moments where I thought, man, this guy looks like he's got something here. But you might be right. It might be time to pump the brakes on Cade Klubnik, and it might be time to pump the brakes on this Clemson team in general. Look, I know they have a lot of returning starters this year. I understand why there was some hype around this team, and they've got some NFL dudes, absolutely, especially that defensive line. I'm not sure they're a legit contender right now. I mean, I'm sorry, you can't have Troy hanging around if you're one of the, true contenders in this sport. That can't be a reality for you. Those are the kind of teams you should be putting away early and letting the backups and the freshmen come in and get some minutes. Those are not the games where your starters have to play till the wire just to pull out a win. Now speaking of backups here, I thought the most impressive win of the entire weekend might just be Oregon destroying Oklahoma State 69-3. This game was an absolute beatdown. Now, look, for you guys that might not realize, Mike Gundy, longtime Oklahoma State coach, kind of ran his mouth in the week leading up to this game. Talked about Oregon and their NIL money and how much they've spent on this team. And then he made some comments about how his quarterback isn't going to be rattled by Autzen Stadium. And yeah, I think Oregon and the fan base, for one, because that stadium was rocking. And the staff clearly came into this game with some extra motivation because they pummeled Oklahoma State, and they played a lot of backups. They had third, fourth string guys playing by the third quarter, and I'm not kidding. They took their foot off the brake. This could have been 100-3 if they wanted it to be. Oklahoma State, now look, they weren't good last year, but this was a team that was picked in the preseason last season to win the Big 12. This is still a Power 4 program. It's not FIU. It's not Louisiana Tech. It's not Austin Peay. It's not Bethune-Cookman. It's not San Jose State or Troy. Now, I mentioned those teams specifically, no offense to them, but those are teams that played Clemson, LSU, Texas, Miami, Georgia, and Penn State, and none of them had a more convincing win than Oregon did against a Power 4 program. This was unbelievable what we've seen from this team. I'm starting to think Oregon has maybe one of the deepest teams in college football. Dante Moore could be the real deal. Now, I know they haven't played anybody great. Montana State, Oklahoma State, who's not a great team, but that's a Power 4 program, and this was a beatdown. I think this team looks really, really deep on both sides of the ball, running backs, receivers. Decorian Moore, the true freshman, the 5-star freshman out of Texas. Wow, this kid looks like the real deal. I don't know. I'm starting to think that this team, even though they're high up in the rankings, they might be getting slept on a little bit here. They could be a problem in the Big Ten this year once again. I'm curious your thoughts. Did you get to check out any of that game?
Yes, I saw the game, but it wasn't much to see personally because of the the blowout. You kind of move around really quick. So, and it was I believe it was like a 30-point spread for the most part. So, once they started taking off, I said, okay, they're going to cover, and Oklahoma State's not going to catch up whatsoever. But I think Oregon always looks like this, and then they get into the thick of it and they fold. And I think that's going to be the same thing that we're going to talk about when they get to the playoffs, because we're going to expect them to be in the playoffs. And then when they get in the playoffs, we're going to see, what are you going to do? Can you go on a run? Because that seems to consistently be the issue with them every single year. So they're going to have to show, similar to what we said about Ohio State, not necessarily the coach, but you guys are always winning 10 games, 11 games, but then you can't make a run until they finally did make a run. Oregon needs to make a run for me to believe.
Yeah, and I'm not sure they will. I think they have the talent to, that's for sure. But this was actually a team that coming into this year was supposed to be, I don't want to say a rebuild, because they reload with too much talent for them to be a true rebuild. But this is a team that lost 12 guys to the NFL draft, a lot of seniors, a lot of juniors. This is a really young Oregon team. They have 4 true freshmen starting on the defense. They've got multiple freshmen on offense that are key contributors. So this is a really young Oregon team, unlike some of the recent Oregon teams where you had Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix, who had a ton of starting experience. Dante Moore, this I believe is only his 7th start. So, this is a team that I think could still be dangerous, but they have a big-time test in a few weeks. Whiteout, Beaver Stadium, Penn State. That'll be a huge rematch of the Big Ten championship game. That'll kind of be a measuring stick for Oregon here to kind of see where they're at. I'm not picking them to win that game by any means, but it's going to be a fun one to kind of see where they are, because I still think, everyone kind of looked at Penn State, even Ohio State as being the two teams where they're kind of the consensus favorites in this conference, but Oregon is kind of lying in the weeds this year a little bit, and they could be sneaky good.
Really quick, that's also a test for Penn State, because they always get to these moments and they fold as well. Now, obviously, there's more pressure on Penn State, but they need to show up, and they need to show up big time. They need to be convincing. Not saying blow them out, but they need to be dominant and look like they didn't really have a chance even if they hang around in the game.
Especially at home, because this is really the year for them. This is the year for Penn State. They brought back a ton of guys. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the country who came back, one of the best running back duos in the country. They added some big-time wide receivers in the transfer portal. They've got that great defense. They bring Jim Knowles over from Ohio State, one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. This team is loaded up and ready to go this year to make a title run. If now, never, because I don't know if we've ever seen a Penn State team that's this ready to make a run at it. So you're absolutely right. They not only need to win this game, I think they need to do it convincingly to kind of show everybody that Penn State is for real this year. Now, we only had one top 25 matchup, but it was a good one. Two blue bloods. Oklahoma gets a big win over Michigan. Like I said, the only matchup between ranked teams all weekend. Now, Oklahoma had a rough year one in the SEC, but they revamped the offense with John Mateer. They bring him and his offense coordinator from Washington State, and it is clicking for this offense right out of the gate. 270 yards, ran for 74 yards, 3 total touchdowns. I think this Michigan team actually has a pretty good defense. And look, John Mateer gets the helmet sticker for me this week. I thought he was impressive, and because of how big this game was for both these programs right now, I think this was a huge win for Oklahoma to kind of show that this program is back, moving in the right direction, and could be a problem in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I had to think about it before I threw my bias out there as an SEC guy, but for the most part, this was a win I actually expected them to win. Bryce Underwood is a first-year starter. They're rebuilding the team. Michigan has the number 1 running back coming in next year. So they're not, I don't want to say they're rebuilding. They're reloading at this point in time. So by the time you get to their second year, a rookie running back can jump in at any point in time. That defense is going to be stronger. This kid, they'll probably go and get a weapon for him. They're going to be back. I know it was an expected win. I didn't expect them, the kid to look as good as he did the first week. Oklahoma's more seasoned. They have a better defense that he's facing. So I don't think anything of this loss in terms of Michigan and their team versus in terms of Oklahoma.
That's fair. And it's not like they got blown out. They hung around. It was a pretty competitive game for the most part, but I'm impressed with John Mateer, man. This is a guy, we had JP Acosta on the show over the offseason. He talked about this guy, said that he was a guy that he was really circling this year, and he looks like the real deal. He looks like a Heisman contender right now. We knew Brent Venables, when he took over at Oklahoma, we knew that he would have the defense playing at a high level. Longtime defense coordinator at Clemson, that's his side of the ball. He's always been great calling a defense, designing a defense, and they've been good defensively. They were good defensively last year, but the offense had struggled since he'd been there. And I've got to give him a lot of credit to be aggressive and to make this move, to bring in a transfer quarterback like this and to bring in a new offense coordinator to go with him and really kickstart the offense, because they look like a complete football team for the first time since he's been there. And I think that's a scary thing because they're going to knock off some teams. I'm not saying they're going to win the SEC or anything, but they're going to knock somebody off. They're going to knock off 1 or 2 big boys in the SEC before it's all said and done. And as far as Michigan, I'm with you. I think they're going to get better with Bryce Underwood as the year goes on because these young guys, true freshmen, 5-star, number 1 recruit in the country. If you haven't seen this kid, he's a big-time talent. I think he's already ahead of where a lot of people thought he would be, to your point, Alex. They might be a year away from being back in the mix in the Big Ten, but they're a team similar to Oklahoma. They might knock off some good teams on the way this year. Look out for Iowa State in the Big 12. This is a team that is quietly making some noise. Rocco Becht, look, he wasn't great. He did just enough in this game, 18 to 27 passing, 134 yards with the touchdown versus that tough Iowa defense. That was a really fun rivalry game, but Iowa State gets the win. I think they're a team that could seriously make a run in the Big 12. What were your thoughts on Georgia, Alex? Because, look, they played an FCF squad and only managed 28 points. I know the defense is great. I know Kirby's great. I know they've got a ton of talent over there in Georgia. There's no doubt about it. I have real question marks about Gunnar Stockton in the offense.
Yeah, I thought Gunnar was going to be better than Carson Beck. I thought that they made the right move and, getting him up out of there and giving the ball to Gunnar right away. But I need to see more from their running game. I'm not sure about their running game. Georgia I'm not going to call them running back you, but we know one thing that they do well is that they run the ball. They're not running the ball as well as I think they should be running the ball going forward. And then Gunner, he's playing a little reserved to me. Now, does that mean I'm not sure if they don't feel they have the horses on the outside that they're accustomed to having, at least one guy, rather, one of those big-time horses out there? I don't know what the disconnect is because I expected him to play different from Carson Beck, and instead I'm seeing more of a safer Carson Beck out there. He just doesn't have pop to me. I mean, there's no, when I say pop, not his arm, I'm just saying pop in terms of, like I see him out there like, oh yeah, there it is. He's going to, by the end of the season, he should be this. Now I just see a lot of what I saw last year from the other quarterback.
I think he's limited. And I think you're right. There's something missing there because the offense, look, the defense might be good enough that they don't need to be great, but I'm a little concerned from what I've seen from the offense so far from Georgia. Arizona State, last year's Big 12 champ, they came into this game ranked number 12 against Mississippi State and got stunned in Starkville. This is a team, look, I just want to give them some credit here before we move on. They look like they have vastly improved from last year's 2-10 finish. Big shout out to Jeff Lebby and this program. I think this is a team that really needed a win like this. A program that's been down. They get a big top 25 win against Arizona State. Here's my biggest criticism, and it's to the SEC, who decided to fine them $500,000 for the fans rushing the field. I mean, come on, SEC. What are you doing? Rushing the field is one of the best parts about college football. It's one of the things that makes college football great. When's the last time Mississippi State knocked off the number 12 team in the country? It's been a long time, man. Let these guys celebrate. You're going to fine them for that? I thought that was ridiculous. Last topic I want to get to here, Alex. North Carolina, probably the only non-top 25 school that we'll talk about all year, let's be honest. They bounced back after that embarrassing loss to TCU. They beat Charlotte. Not an overly impressive win, but that's not the headline. And that's not the reason we're talking about them once again this week. Earlier this week, it was discovered that Bill Belichick had banned scouts from the New England Patriots from attending practices at Chapel Hill. Quote, "It's clear I'm not welcome there at their facility, so they're not welcome at ours." End quote. Now, Mike Vrabel came on and said to the media later saying that his former NFL coach is welcome at the team's facility. Since his departure as the head coach here, he's been back, and I'll leave it at that. Look, I like the hire of Belichick at UNC. I did. I thought it was an out-of-the-box hire. They needed a spark. This guy's a legend. He's bringing this program some juice that they desperately needed. And quite frankly, I actually think he can eventually build something and win some games at UNC. I also think, and look, contrary to what a lot of people have said, I think this is his last coaching job. I think this is it. I think he hangs it up at UNC. I think the NFL is over Bill Belichick, and I think things like this are going to keep them away even more, and I don't think he's getting offers anytime soon from any of these NFL teams. And the reason I hate this so much and I don't understand it is this only hurts your program, Bill. It only hurts your program, and it only hurts your reputation with the NFL, and it only hurts your players' ability to be seen and potentially get drafted into the NFL, which doesn't help your program either. Because, Alex, you know who was great with NFL scouts and coaches? Nick Saban.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that it only helped him and his players if they got drafted. So this is a guy that always was known for rolling out the red carpet. Anytime NFL coaches, scouts, or whoever wanted to come down to Alabama, he served it up on a silver platter. Bill Belichick clearly does not get it.
So, yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. The way my pushback is going to come, I don't think he's going to last 2 years at North Carolina. And the reason I say that, and he'll be back in the NFL, one, because Mark Davis exists, the Jacksonville Jaguars exist, and who's to say what better dessert is served cold than when Miami fires Mike McDaniel? He goes right to Miami. Why not? So, and we know that he's chasing Don Shula for that win total. He wants that title. So we know for a fact any NFL job and he's going to be in a position where at that point he'll give up the GM aspect of his in terms of chasing down Don Shula, then retiring as the all-time wins leader. So I think those teams will always be. I don't think he's going to survive 2 years. I think that the transfer portal aspect of it is going to be very irritating to him when he loses a big-time player to South Carolina, who, at some point we're going to talk about them this season, because whatever's going on down there, something's going on down there in the water in South Carolina. When he loses a big recruit to, Alabama, Florida, whatever team, he's not going to want to deal with it, because the same coach that he was in New England is the same coach that he is now in North Carolina. And I don't think that translates well to college. It may translate well to other teams because, hey, this is a guy coming in with, the old Pat Riley rule when he got with LeBron and sat down with all his rings. That may work in the NFL. Those kids, I don't feel they look at Bill the same way, and he doesn't have the Deion effect. So I don't think that he's going to be there longer than 2 years for the most part. I don't think he's going to build anything there. I think he's going to be there for 2 years, and then the first team that comes calling, maybe even 1 year, like I said, with Miami, or hell, let's throw another team in the map, the Giants. Any one of those teams come calling, he's out of there. So I don't think he's going to be there more than 2 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure those calls are coming. The last time he was available, he wasn't getting that many calls, and he turned a lot of teams off, and he really didn't have the offers that he thought he was going to have, and that's why he's in college right now, and I'm not sure that changes. Here's my last question on this. If things really go sideways at UNC, does it hurt his legacy as a coach? Let's hypothetically say I'm right and he doesn't make it back to the NFL. Let's say this is his last stint as a coach and it goes off the rails. Does it hurt his legacy, or is it just Jordan playing for the Wizards?
It's Jordan playing for the Wizards. He has 6.
We conveniently forget about it.
Yeah, we conveniently forget about it. It's Jordan playing for 6. So that's going to happen. It's not going to be. He's not destroying Alabama. Now, if he went to Alabama, we might be having a different discussion. But UNC, no, they're a basketball school. And hey, Brad, before we get out of here, I didn't give my helmet sticker and I didn't give my NFL Player of the Week. NFL Player of the Week is none other than Daniel Jones. 2 touchdowns on the ground, 1 through the air, a thrashing of the Miami Dolphins, 33-8. And on the college side, Blake Sharple, 279 for, as you said, Mississippi State. In Arizona.
I like those picks. Daniel Jones, wow, what a shocking performance that was. We talked about the dumpster fire that is the Miami Dolphins, but look, he absolutely tore it up. And that's also got to sting a little bit when you watch Russell Wilson go out there and just look completely inept, and then you watch your former quarterback go and have maybe the best performance of any quarterback in the NFL in week 1. That's got to sting a little extra for Giants fans. But yeah, I also like the pick there for the helmet sticker. Guys, if you enjoyed the show, do us a favor, like always. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Be sure to check out the audio-only podcast as well. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to give it a listen because we do drop the occasional audio-exclusive episodes. And guys, for myself, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.